Hi, Ray.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Thank God for that.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get this right now for the gallery thing.
Okay.
That's it. I think I'm there. Listen, I won't be able to do a thing after this because Wendy and I are going out to dinner.
Okay. Yep.
Lionel,
Ray, how are you doing?
very well, my friend. Many buckets of blood have gone under the bridge since we last met.
Indeed. So where are you, Ray?
In Virginia.
In Virginia.
Yes,
Is that where have you retired there now?
Yes, we've been here for 37 years now.
Mm-hmm. How have you been, Ray? You look good.
Feeling good. Everything's nice. I've had two or three little hiccups, as Philip knows, but I've got through them, and I'm back and nice and enjoying life.
I'm pleased to hear that. You're looking well. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, my friend. It's a long
I'm picking up Robin tomorrow. He's in town. He's not terribly well, as I think you know.
Yeah, I know. I've only just got back in touch with him after all these years.
Yeah.
By accident, thanks through Philip. He was watching one of Philip's things and he found me again.
Yes.
You know, it's been a long time because Robin and I started off many years ago with Black Beauty.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
He was my camera operator.
Yes, I remember that. That was just before we did Living Dead, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Because I got him out there.
Yeah, I remember that. Philip, hello to you. Good evening to you in the UK. How are you today?
I'm very good. Good evening, Lionel. Yeah, having a nice weekend so far. You?
Oh, good. Thank you very much. We've had some rain, which is nice.
Oh yeah. It's a nice change, isn't it?
This is not wine. This is cranberry juice.
I believe you.
Okay, I stopped drinking wine about 18 months. I stopped drinking, period, about 18 months ago.
Right.
Oh, okay.
For no reason at all. I was at a bad time at that time, went through a bad thing, but after the bad thing and all the surgery and that, suddenly I didn't want to drink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor's pleased about that. Wendy's pleased about it because I don't go to sleep at the dinner table anymore. Philip, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, pretty good week. Busy, but that's always nice.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to see if we've got anybody any problems logging on. No, I think we'll wait a few minutes before we begin just to make sure everybody can log in. We've got a few people joining us tonight.
We've got a roller coaster ride tonight.
Yes, it's quite interesting. I mean, you and I, Ray, were watching the film last night, weren't we? Coincidentally, almost about the same sort of time. Lionel, did you get a chance to watch it?
I watched it, yes, the day before yesterday.
What were your initial thoughts?
Well, I think it'd be nice if we could go back and do certain things again, but I think I thought it brought back very happy memories for me, Ray. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, very happy. The memories were super happy. You know, I'm just glad that I didn't stay making horror movies. Oh God, I could see some mistakes I made there as a young director. Needless to say, we will probably talk about them as we go along.
Yeah.
I was in a learning thing, but I had a very happy time there. I must admit, I had a beautiful house there in Cape Town under the Table Mountain. I had everything I needed. It was super, except for all the bloody politics that went on.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and you've been a very successful man ever since that, young Lionel, with your books and your touring and.
Yes. You know, life has been interesting since we last spoke. I can't believe it's 50 years, but it is hard to believe, isn't it? My goodness.
Well, we were saying the other week when I've done a few of these shows with Philip now, I did my last stunt when I was a stuntman 59 years ago.
Yeah. What was that, on the Avengers? What was that on?
Yeah, that was on the Avengers. That was 59 years ago, the last stunt I ever did. And then I became a director, momentarily a director of horror.
Yeah.
And virgin type witches and young girls in prisons. Oh God! The thing I'm amazing, I have to tell you, Lionel, when I run it, I also run the reviews afterwards.
Yes.
And I was so surprised at how many people like The House of the Living Dead.
Yes.
I didn't know it. Mark Burns won Actor of the Year for the Cointreau Film Festival in 1956 for his playing that.
Yeah,
Which bores me.
Yeah, 1974.
74.
The Catalan National Film Festival is what I found it. Yeah, 74.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had 3 emails and read some reviews that a lot of people were very disappointed because we didn't have any zombies. It was credited to the life of the living dead, and they expected the zombie clan wanted zombies. One poor woman was telling me that she sat to the end of the movie hoping a zombie was going to happen on the steps of Brickling House. And she said, the zombies never appeared, so you misled me.
Yeah, I must admit, the first time you brought the subject of doing this that way, and House of Living Dead, I was, because I'm not a horror film fan by any stretch, and I was a bit sort of, okay, this is going to be quite interesting, and the film surprised me when I watched it, because it again is the title is quite misleading, because it wasn't, of course, the original title, was it? You weren't shooting under that title, were you?
Yeah, we were shooting under the House of the Living Dead, but they changed the name twice. I think twice it was changed.
Yeah, because in my research, apparently originally it was Shadows over Bridge Place.
Oh, yeah.
Might have been a bit more, and then there was, I think it was released obviously as House of the Living Dead, but also Curse of the Dead. So I think around about that time you had a lot of zombie films in the 70s, and I think they changed the title a bit to cash in to what was popular at the time. So that may be why it became a bit misleading.
Yeah. Well, also I got an email here from a guy. Hold on a second, guys. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Bertram Delmain says that when they have the horror festivals on Sunset Boulevard, this movie is a talk along with it, like Mummy Dearest. The audience actually talk the dialogue along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's become a cult movie that people go there like they do with Mummy Dearest, and they do the dialogue with it. Because I went there many years ago to see Mummy Dearest, because I'd heard they did this. They all dress up, and they take coat hangers with them and all that nonsense for Joan Crawford. But they all do the dialogue as it goes on. Well, it appears they do that with this, according to one of my fans here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
so for those watching along, and either live or on YouTube, I'll be watching the film in front of me from YouTube. So if you want to just type in House of the Living Dead into YouTube, and it will pop up. It's not the best print. It doesn't quite do justice, of course, Lionel's wonderful cinematography, but it still gives you a good insight into what it still comes across, I think, quite nicely.
Yes, it's a very dark print.
if the audience gets a flashlight, they'll be able to see it better.
Yeah. Hopefully one day it will be restored, but for now it's because I think you were saying yesterday that originally it was shot in 4.3, more sort of the television.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1.
Right.
185.
Yeah.
Was it shot at 185?
For 185 projection, it was shot full gate 4.3, but for 185 projection.
Right. Yeah. Because the one on the on YouTube is the the 158. Yeah. If people don't wish to watch the film as we're doing it, it's not a problem. Our conversation doesn't necessarily need people to watch it, but it's just there to springboard any questions people might want to ask during during the event. If people want to interact, there is a chat function. Any questions, any comments you want to put to Lionel or Ray, just put them in the chat and I'll read them out as we go. So if everybody's got their copy ready, Lionel, are you going to watch it with us or just sort of talk about it, or how do you
So
prefer
how do I do it if I want to watch it? What do I need to do?
if you go to YouTube and just type in House of the Living Dead, it should pop up.
I don't want to lose. Will that take me away from the webinar if I do that?
It's
I use a different browser.
Yeah, if you've got a mobile phone, you could perhaps have it running on your phone. That might be an alternate way around it, just so you don't lose the both of us.
I don't want to lose you. So let me just see here. I've got my phone right here. I haven't done this way before. So what's the format, Philip? You're going to run the film.
I'm going to run the film. We're going to talk about it as it goes through. So we'll talk about the various people involved in the film, the various scenes, actors, and we just sort of have a general conversation. And I'm sure we'll cover other aspects of your careers as well. And then afterwards, a few minutes wrap up, and that'll be the lot. So,
okay, I'm going to go to Chrome and I'm going to try and run it on there
okay.
at the same time as we're watching. Let me just do that very, very quickly.
Perfect.
My goodness, what do I do here? Google, YouTube. Okay, there's YouTube, and now I go there and I go to House of the Living Dead. House of the Living Dead, there it is. Okay, and okay, I have it over there, and okay, so anytime you're ready, Philip.
Yeah, so I pause on the John P. Kelly Presents credit. So we'll so I'll do a countdown from 5. We'll press play, and we'll start the proceedings.
Okay.
So oh yeah, if you have the sound off, Lionel, just because obviously otherwise it might be a bit distracting.
That baboon's very noisy.
Yes, I just want to mention the the baboon. Yeah. So okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to ask how you both got involved with this film. Lionel, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I will be happy to answer that question. Let me just turn the volume up a bit so I can hear you. I had shot a film in Cape Town the year before this film was made, and that was also had a slight horror aspect to it, but it was really a musical. It was a musical comedy. It was shot in Afrikaans, and it was a very low budget film. And when I'd finished that, I was approached by Phil Krasny, and offered this movie. And I was thrilled to accept it. He really liked what he saw on the film that I did the year before that. One thing that we had to do, because the budget was so low, we had all sorts of special effects. We had ghosts flying, singing songs, and all sorts of ridiculous things. And we had to do it all in camera. And he was quite impressed by the fact that we were innovative enough to carry that off and do it. And he said, I've got this little horror movie that's coming up. We'd like you to shoot it. We'd be interested. When I heard that Ray was going to direct it, I was absolutely thrilled for this opportunity. And that's how I got involved in this project. And unfortunately, Ray brought his favorite camera operator with him from England, Robin Brown, who he and I have now been very, very good friends for the last 50 years, ever since we worked on the film. And Robin was a great asset to have on this picture. And of course, he and Ray had worked before many times. So that was an asset as well. Anyway, it was a wonderful experience, and I'm very grateful for having done it.
Oh, well, wonderful. And Ray, how was the project pitched to you? And
I just want to say that Robin Brown did this English show Black Beauty with me, and he my camera operator on the episode which won me the Montrose Film Festival. I got the film festival with that one of my episodes. And Robin did that, and Robin was a good camera operator and very helpful, because I was a young director at that stage. I hadn't directed too much. I directed Avengers and and things like that. But I hadn't done an awful lot. I got landed Black Beauty, so I was out there on a wing, and Robin was very helpful to me. I just wanted everybody to know that. The getting involved with it is a long story, which I know we've got time for, so I will bore you with it.
Yes.
And the thing is, I'm quite a bit negative about my start and the movie, because I'm still owed £7,000 already by Phil Krasny, who never ever paid his bills. It was not a very nice time. I came across him. I was doing a show in England with Sheldon Leonard, Shirley's World, and I went away to Tokyo and shot one thing and another. And Sheldon introduced me to Philip Krasny. Philip Krasny asked me to direct. He'd seen a movie I directed called The Virgin Witches, and he asked me to direct a show called. It was called then Fun and Games, but it went out under the title One Woman, 1,000 Men.
Yeah.
About the daughter of the governor of a prison with 1,000 men, and she was the only sexy little girl there. So I did this for Krasny, and everything went okay, and I got paid. And then he asked me if I'd go and do this thing in South Africa. I saw the scripts from a South African writer, which I liked the script, and I liked everything. But I didn't realize the problems I was going to have. Lionel was used to these problems because he was shooting in South Africa, and he knew that the business and what you could cope with out there and what you couldn't cope with. I went out there as if I was still going out to work from Pinewood Studios or Shepperton Studios with all the frills and that, and I got a heck of a shock. Number one, trying to get my salaries through for a start. But the big problem was I had too many bosses. We had Phil Krasny, who was the executive producer and the man from America who knew film and knew Sheldon Leonard and those sort of things. But we also had Matty Drucker, who was a man who owned a laundry, and another one called Rubin, who owned another restaurant business. And the thing that a lot of the audience will not realize, in those days, the biggest thing for American millionaires, South African millionaires, was to get money out of the country, to get rand out. They needed to get their money out of the country. They were very rich people, a lot of them, very rich and very clever people, but they could not get rand out of South Africa. It was impossible. Now comes along a man called Philip Krasny, who says, I'm a film producer and I make all these films, and I will get you your money returned out of this film anywhere in the world you want it. So suddenly he's got people falling over left, right, and center to invest. I mean, I'm not joking. I mean, Lionel will probably remember this. I mean, Krasny had people arrive at his hotel with bags of gold rand in.
Wow.
Not paper, not checks, not notes, bags of gold rand, giving him money to please put in his movie. And would they please have it? And when the film was premiered in Berlin, would they pay him in Deutschmark? Or would they pay it back in America when it was on Sunset Strip? And Philip Krasny was saying, yes, absolutely, whatever. And he was getting all this money to do these movies. He had about 5 investors, and all these investors had credits as producers. And all of them wanted to bring their wives, if you remember, Lionel, to the set and sit in chairs. And on the back of the chairs, it said producers. And they were a pain in the backside, an absolute pain in the backside. But at least we enjoyed it.
Well, I thought you were very tolerant of all of that. You really dealt with them pretty well, actually.
Oh, it was a nightmare. Can I look through the camera? Can I have a look through the camera, Priya? What are you doing next? Should he be that tall? I mean, it was crazy, absolutely crazy. And I'm saying to Krasny, you've got to keep these people away. He said, you can't do that with his big black cigar. He smoked a big cigar because he unfortunately chewed the end of it, and it was terrible. He said, you can't do that. He said, he's one of the top investors. Oh, okay. And then 2 days later, someone else will arrive with his wife and 2 children. Oh, you can't get rid of him. No, he's going to invest so and so. It was absolutely chaotic the way it was going on. So that's my memory. But as Lionel said at the beginning, when we tuned in a little while ago, it was a very happy unit, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Even though we made a lot of mistakes, or I made a lot of mistakes. We had a hell of a good time. I just wish I'd have got paid all the way through.
Yeah.
I summed it up about right, Lionel.
You're spot on, Ray. Absolutely.
I want to talk about the quite impressive opening of the film, with the shots of over the test tubes and the laboratory equipment. Had you done a lot of research, Ray, in terms of horror films of the era, or was it kind of just your vision of what it?
Just worked it out with the South African props and set dresser designer, what we were going to do with it, and what we imagined the soul would look like inside a tube, and left it to Lionel to maybe it'd be pretty colours and make it look good, and lots of bubbles going in and out of pipes, and that was our foundation of that room.
And how did you approach the cinematography, Lionel? Did you again do a bit of research? Were you sort of emulating a certain tone, or how did you approach the film?
Well, I wish we had, in fact, all of us on the camera crew, wished we had a bigger budget to work with, so that the souls in those bottles could have been a slightly more sophisticated special effect. But we couldn't do that. We were left with what we had, as Ray said, and my wife actually was the at the time, we subsequently got divorced, but Anita was my wife, and she was the art director on the film, and she dressed that lab pretty well, I thought, with vintage equipment. And we had some very good people in the props department. We found all this vintage test tube stuff and bottles and whatever else, and we dressed that lab very, very well. But it was up to us in the camera crew and in the lighting department to create these souls in these bottles. And I wish that we had more of a special effects budget to do something a little more sophisticated than we had. But what we did is we cut a hole underneath each of those bell jars, and underneath that we had a lamp, and each one had a different colored gel, and we had a sophisticated system of where the gels could be changed, the colors could be changed. We had a thing on a revolving little pillar, so that it changed, rather like a spot in a theater where the colors changed. And we also had smoke going in there, so we had tons of people either blowing cigarette smoke into tubes or burning coals and stuff to make the smoke. It was a really complicated thing to do in this hot little room at the top of this house, and it really was in the top of the house, if I remember correctly, Ray. We
in the
right
attic.
up in the roof, didn't we? Up in the top room. And so we had dozens of people behind the scenes blowing smoke and turning things and so on to make those souls bounce around in those bell jars. It was really tough to do, but fortunately with a good crew, we could orchestrate things where the camera could move through and go from one soul to another, and it kind of worked, I think. In retrospect, I suppose it
I believed it.
Yeah.
I believed every word of it.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you up front. We can't tell you too much up front about this, otherwise the people who are watching along with us, it will spoil the ending.
Oh yeah, we won't spoil it. Yeah,
so we won't do that. But one thing I want to tell you is show you what a dummy thing I was as a director in those days, because we had a nice little actress, Shirley Ann Field, who was as good as gold. We had a scene, Lionel will remember this, and you'll see it. That's why I'm telling you ahead. When Shirley Ann Field is with Lady Battling, sitting down having tea in the big room, there is the portrait over the fireplace of the father with the two boys. And it's way up over the fireplace, and it's a very, very high fireplace. I mean, it's got to be 6 foot high. And I wanted to go from the two ladies to the portrait when she mentioned it. So I said, there's lots of tables around. We even had a coffee table, and they never had coffee tables in those days, but Anita gave me one. I had a coffee table, I had a side table, and they're drinking tea. So I wanted Shirley Ann to get rid of this cup and take me onto the painting. So I said, when she measures it, take the cup and go and put it on the mantelpiece under the painting, and Robin will pan across with you and hold on the painting. She said, okay. We did a rehearsal, and the poor girl, I mean, she could have put the cup down anywhere, next to her chair, anything, but because this director wanted the painting. So she walks across on the rehearsal, and she tries to put this cup on the mantelpiece. She can't even reach it. It's like that. So in the end, we put a pancake box down, which was, I think, 18 inches. So she walks across, you can't see her to make the move, but she steps up on the box and places this one teacup under the painting so I can hold this stupid shot. And when you get to it, you'll see what a dummy thing it was. She can hardly reach it as it is. She could have put the cup down anywhere. But no, Ray Austin, the director, had to have it his way. It was she was as good as gold, though. She did it. And everybody, you remember that shot?
Yeah, very, extremely well, extremely well. And
she had to step on this box, the poor girl.
Extremely well, of course, yes. And that was a real set, by the way, Philip. That was part. We dressed it, of course, but the room existed in this wonderful house, and it was a
beautiful house, Dutch house.
Yeah, absolutely amazing house, and I think it was slated for demolition, if I remember correctly, wasn't it?
It went down soon after.
Yeah. An extraordinary house, and we had that house to ourselves. Of course, we blacked the whole place up. We had big awnings on the outside, keeping the sunlight out, keep the house as dark as possible on the inside. But it was a mammoth, huge house. It soaked up light like blotters. I mean, these rooms and the atriums and the hallways and everything were vast. So it certainly taxed all of us. We had to hide cables and hide lamps, and boy, we were stretched right to the hilt. But I think the house looked amazing, and the house had wonderful character.
But you had a hell of a job lighting the gallery.
Yes, and you remember the one shot, Ray, where you wanted a shot of Shirley Ann Field looks up and she sees a shadow on the wall of Brett with the sack over his shoulder, and what you wanted was, oh, she's only seeing the shadow. And we sort of panned around this entire enormous room, this atrium area, if you like, from a gallery where she was supposedly standing, and until the shadow gets to the curtain, and then it becomes live action, and you see the figure disappearing beyond the curtain into
I remember it very well.
Creating that shot almost took a day to light, because we had something like, I don't know how many people on various lamps, turning lamps on and off, and we had about 5 or 6 different people with making the silhouette of this guy and the sack to give it a sense of realism. But it worked. When I watched it the other night, I thought, wow, it actually worked.
It actually worked. One of your nightmares wasn't, I always remember you cursing it at the time, is that all the paintings we had there, they were varnished. Yes. And you were getting kickback in all the bloody paintings, unless you got it at a certain angle so you could see the face of the painting. Otherwise, you got this great big flare coming off of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. You'll see that, the audience will see that as the movie goes on. It's a heck of a job that you had in lighting that gallery and one thing up there. Hell of a job.
So there wasn't any studio work at all, and it sounds like it was all
no
location,
and it was all location, as Lionel said.
We naturally we dressed the sets, we dressed all of those rooms, and we added things to it and so on. But it was all shot in that house, an amazing house. Forget the name of it. It was a wonderful, huge mansion.
There's lots of use of animals in this film. Very at the beginning, the baboon being kidnapped, and obviously it's a very eerie sequence, and the scene of it being operated on. And was it like, Ray, to work with, say, the baboon and then the snake later on? Was it?
Well, there's a snake I hated working with. I don't like snakes at all.
Me neither.
And I wind up the first shots of the film with a bloody snake. But the actors was good as gold with the snake. I mean, I can't remember the Australian actor there, the South African actor. He was very good with the snake. Whenever I wanted it moving, I called him. I didn't go anywhere near it. I hated it.
Yeah.
But the baboon stuff, you see, in those days, we got away with it. We wouldn't be able to do it these days. I mean, they tranquilized the baboon so that it would lie still and be quiet. The baboon was very happy. It was very high on morphine or whatever it was. But in this day and age, as you know, you'd have a wrangler on there, you'd have a boom wrangler, like we have a fly wrangler on movies now. You can't do those things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in the old days, you used to do what would now be shocking things. If a director wanted a fly to walk over a meat sandwich, someone pulled a wing off the fly and it would walk over the meat sandwich. It wouldn't fly away.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that now because you actually, and I'm not joking, you'd have a fly wrangler on the set. If you're doing a fly shot, you will have someone who's in charge of flyers, which is right. Which is right. I go along with that. But we did in those days. We just did things.
And how did you find working with animals, Lionel, in terms of, did it complicate your work at all?
No, not really. I was always concerned about the animals. I've always been very much a pro-animal rights person, and I've been vegetarian all my life for that reason. And I was concerned about that baboon, but we treated it very well, and yeah, it was sedated, and it behaved extremely well. We were all worried about it becoming waking up and going a bit crazy in the lab and biting Mark Burns, but it didn't. It was fine. The snake, of course, I was concerned about the snake, and if I remember correctly, it was supposedly supposed to be a black adder, but which is one of the most poisonous snakes in Africa. But I think that this variety of snake that we used was not an adder, so it was probably not a very, very toxic snake, poisonous snake. However, I thought Mark Burns was amazing, the way he just stretched out, picked it up behind the head as he was told to do, and I think in one take he got it right. He just did it. Yeah, he did it in one take.
I remember him saying to me, "Should I hold it like this?" And he's showing me. I said, "Keep it away from me. You do whatever you want. Do whatever you want with it. Keep it over there, over there."
We've got a scene now with Mark Burns and Lady Margaret Inglis playing Lady Bracknell. What was Margaret like to work with?
You asking me? She's a lovely lady. I took her on again when we came back. I had her on Space 1999. I took her on to that as well.
Yeah.
She was a lovely lady. She's a very experienced actress. She's got a lot of credits, and worked practically all the time. She also did a lot of stage.
Yeah.
But she was as good as gold. Everybody was as good as gold. And bear in mind, out there, we were shooting in a lot of heat. Those women in those dresses, they were baking in. I mean, you had to get unzipped between shots, otherwise they just poured with sweat, the poor thing, or perspiration, as it's a lady. They did so well. Shirley Ann and all the ladies did well, and it was damn hot, very hot. The dirt was hot when you were standing in it.
Right.
Yes, it was summertime when we shot that. I think down there, wasn't it? At the I forget the month, but it was summertime down in the south, and it could get very, very hot. Yeah. And our costume lady, she had a little facility set up in the house in one of the back rooms. She had a team of ladies on sewing machines going all the time, knitting and sewing up wardrobe and getting things ready. And I thought she was absolutely marvelous. But yeah, those actors certainly suffered in those costumes, particularly Shirley Ann Field. I mean, they dressed her with corsets and all kinds of stuff as they wore in that period. And it been extremely uncomfortable for them, and plus all the lights on, of course. And you remember, we were not shooting digital those days. Today, you don't need much light to shoot in. Those days, we're shooting film, and the film stock that we were using, I think we were using Eastman color 5254, if I remember correctly, either 5254 or 5251, and that was rated at an ASA of 125, which is the equivalent of like 125 ISO today, which is nothing. So in order to, even though you're creating images that are dark with lots of shadows, you need a massive amount of light to create that, because the film stock is not as sensitive as digital cameras are today. And for those actors to have to perform under those conditions was, as Ray said, very trying.
Does the use of the type of film stock you use, is that determined by the subject matter or what is available? Is it a money concern or?
I think the go-to stock at that time was Eastman color. Around the world was Eastman color, no matter where you shot, certainly in the Western world. And type 5254 was a new negative that had just come out that replaced a negative that was around for donkey's years called 5251. And 5254 was a slightly more upgraded version of that, slightly more sensitive, no grain, no noise in the image at all. You know, it was wonderful film stock. I mean, I mourn the passing of film. I don't know about you, Ray, but the
Agreed.
film book, you know, I really mourn the loss of those amazing days of shooting on film. And the whole mechanics of, you know, a mechanical camera with shutters and registration pins and all that. I miss all that.
Agreed. The people, as we've said on this show before, are never going to have the times which we've had in the industry. They've gone. We had them. It was marvelous.
Yeah,
It was.
It's absolutely marvelous.
Yeah. As you mentioned, Margaret, Lionel, did you have any comments to add about working with Margaret at all?
Margaret was an absolute gem of a lady. She was as good as gold. She never argued. She was sweet and kind and very tolerant. And even though it sometimes took us a long time to change lighting and camera angles and things like that, she was just remarkable. She tolerated it all. She didn't have a trailer as a movie star would have today. You know, she was always available. She was not too far away from set if we needed her. She was an absolute charming, wonderful lady. I couldn't have asked to work with a nicer person than that. In fact, the entire cast were really terrific, all of them, including some of the younger members that Ray cast, the local people. They were wonderful, and they worked really hard to try and deliver good performances under trying conditions. You know, all in all, I only have high things to say about everybody.
There was a really good local cast in this, and Ray, do you remember that process? Were you casting professional actors, or were they sort of people?
I cast out there with the help. I can't remember a nice lady. We saw some theatre when I got there. Bill Flynn, I got from a theatre group there, and the actor that played the friend of Mark Burns in it, I can't remember his name. He went on to do quite a lot of stuff, but he was from the same theatre where I found Billy as well. They were all good, and especially the Cape Coloured people that we had. The only one that makes me laugh is the witch, the witchcraft lady with the light shining in her eyes all the time. I mean, that's the one that makes me smile, bless her. And she had no idea what she was saying or what she was chanting. She just told her whatever I said to say. And
yes, Ray says to her, "Make it up, just make it up." And then she comes up with this and she says, "Well, how about this? Unser Mond," whatever she said sounded perfect. You know?
I said, just sing it and chant it, whatever you wanted to do. You know, I said, the moon's high over there and it's going to sink into the dirt, and it will come up over the horse's back. And she, I don't know, I said, I didn't know. But she was as good as gold.
Wasn't she? She really was. Yeah, she was wonderful. Yeah, all of them. Yes.
With the light shining and sorry, Lionel, do you want to?
No, I was going to talk about the young girl who played Shirley Ann's maid in the film. I forget her name now. But anyway, that was her first role, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And Ray worked pretty hard with her to deliver a performance, and you know, she did it. She pulled it off.
My first bad experience of a party with her. We've been shooting with her, and I was coaxing her. She's going along very nicely, and we finished one evening. We did some night stuff, and we finished. And they had a bus to take the local talent back off different drop-offs in Cape Town, and some had to go out to District 6, that area, and she missed the bus, and I had a chauffeur and a car. You know, it was in my contract that I had a chauffeur and a car. So I said, "Don't worry, we give you a lift home. Don't worry." She said, "Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir." And I put her in the car, and I went to get in the car in the back with her, and the driver said, "No, you can't do that." I said, "What do you mean I can't do that?" He said, "You can't do that." He said, "She has to sit in the back. You've got to sit in the front with me." I said, "Wait a minute. I'm the boss. I sit in the back. Everybody else sitting there. He said, no, he said, you can't do it. He said, you get arrested by the police. You're sitting in the back with them. And that was my first thing that it struck me how strong the apartheid thing was out there.
Yeah.
It was, and so I did in the end. I sat in the front with him because he convinced me, we'd be arrested.
Yeah.
And she sat in the back. We were her chauffeur and her butler taking her home. It was right, but she was a nice girl. I don't know whatever happened to her. I don't think she made any other credits. I've got no idea.
I have no idea what happened to her.
That was Dia Asido, wasn't it? I believe.
Asido, yes, that's right.
I mean, how did you find working in South Africa, Lionel? In terms of, I take it like way it wasn't always the easiest place to work in.
Well, no, I shot a total of maybe 18 films out there over a number of years, and during the apartheid days, it was very difficult. And I worked with some major actors, including people like Ken Gampu, who was in many films, and Simon Sabella, who was a very well known black actor in South Africa. But apartheid, with all its raging ugliness, these people could not even eat with the white members of the cast. They had to eat separately, and it was terribly embarrassing to have to deal with that and to have to put up with this. There were some films where all those rules were thrown out the window. We didn't pay any attention to that. I did some movies that were primarily big outdoor adventure films where we didn't pay any attention to the rules of apartheid. But when you came back to the cities and you had a premiere or whatever, they had to sit separately from the white audience if they were even allowed into the theater where the film was being premiered. It was a horrendous system to work under. On the set, we never had any problems, but the minute you went out in the big wide world where Big Brother was watching, you had to be very careful. Yeah, and it was difficult.
Were you guys staying in reasonably close proximity to the locations? Was it easier to keep it kind of controlled in that respect?
No, you were never near the so-called non-white, for want of a better term, locations. Those were always on the part of the proximities of the cities. They were never near where movies like this were shot. But I had worked on films in those areas, and you were watched like a hawk by members of the security branch, so that there would be no interface with locals. What were you doing and where were you going and so on? And it was just very, very awkward, difficult times. Unpleasant.
Yeah. See, and that affected me as well, because our so-called investors who were investing all these rand to get it out of the country, they were people who employed the Cape Coloured and the black out there, and they administered to this way. And when they came to the set to see that, they were surprised to see the way we mixed and talked to each other and sat at the table on craft service and had coffee or whatever it was. It gave a very bad taste in the mouth, the whole thing. Absolutely.
They were really difficult days, and thank heavens it all came to an end. Took a long time coming, but eventually we all knew it was going to end. There was no question it could last. We all knew that. The matter, the whole problem was, when would this come about? And it was only when de Klerk, F.W. de Klerk, in the early 80s, made that speech in Parliament where he said, "I'm calling an end to all this nonsense. Apartheid is dead. I'm going to release Nelson Mandela from prison." And overnight, for us in South Africa, this was a bigger event than the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was a huge accomplishment. And the world recognized that. I mean, when you see Nelson Mandela, you talk about Nelson Mandela anywhere in the world, people know who you're talking about. That's how much of publicity the whole South African story got around the world. Nelson Mandela became a hero everywhere.
Just going back to a question regarding Dia. She only had two acting credits. This was her last one. So as to what became of her, I've got no idea. We should probably talk about Shirley Ann Field, because she arrives doesn't appear until about 20 minutes into the film, so quite a late entry for the female lead. Do you both remember Shirley? Ray, do you want to kick us off?
Oh yeah, very, very, very well. I first worked with Shirley on Saturday night and Sunday morning with Albert Finney when I was a stuntman. You know, she got a surprise of her life when she arrived in Cape Town and found out the director was an ex-stuntman. She arrived with a new baby. She arrived with a new baby and a nanny.
Yeah.
She had a hairdresser, Ashley Famous. I think that she nicknamed him Ashley Famous, the hairdresser. He was a nice gay guy. But she stuck it very well and did exactly what you wanted her to do. She was no problem at all. You know, she had some big credits under her belt at that stage. She'd done the Steve McQueen movie and one thing and another.
When did you do My Beautiful Laundrette? Was that after Living Dead or before that, Ray? When did she do that?
Which was that?
My Beautiful Laundrette.
After.
Afterwards, was it? Yeah.
I think Philip will check. Philip will check.
Yeah, I'll check. Yeah. She'd done Alfie by this point, of course.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes. She was a major star.
So how did it come about that you cast her, Ray? What was the process like in terms of getting?
I didn't have anything to do with it. Philip Krasny had managed to get a deal on her. He was looking for a name, and she was a name at that stage.
Yeah.
It was a fait accompli from me, which I wouldn't have changed. I mean, I had no problem with it at all.
Yeah, wonderful.
A pretty young girl coming out from England to marry a rich South African. It worked for me. Worked for me like it did with Mark. I was the one who cast Mark.
Yeah.
But Shirley was a done deal. That was a done deal. That came with the money.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're quite correct, Ray, that My Beautiful Laundrette, that was 85.
Yeah.
So how do you know Mark Burns before this, Ray, or again, was it somebody?
Yeah, I've worked with Mark Burns again back in those days as a stuntman in the past. But I'd never had him as an actor. I used him as an actor later.
The Avengers, House of Cards, wasn't it? The new Avengers, yeah.
House of Cards, I used him. And was so surprised he died a very young man. He died very young.
Yeah, I think he was 71. He kept acting and was quite prolific in TV and things, but never became, the leading man that he showed himself could be in this film.
Well, the one was the biggest shock there. Have you got to that scene with Shirley Ann Filburn and the teacup?
I don't think I have, unless I've missed it, but I'll keep an eye out for it.
I just want to hear if everybody laughs. What I was going to say was, and Lionel will remember, David Oxley.
Yeah.
David Oxley was touted back in England and in America long before to becoming a very big star. He was a very good-looking man, extremely good-looking man, a very decent actor. And unfortunately, people started to say he is going to be another Anthony Steele, a good-looking Anthony Steele, or another Rock Hudson. Never ever happened for the man. And again, he died very young.
Yeah, this was actually his last film or TV acting credit. And he died at 64 in 85.
Because the Hound of the Baskervilles sort of brought him to the fore. The Hound of the Baskervilles, they said, well, this man is going to be a big star. But it never really happened.
Yeah.
But he was a good-looking man, wasn't he, Lionel?
He was a very good-looking guy, and he had a good voice as well.
Yes, absolutely. Dark brown voice.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes. Yeah. What a shame that he didn't go further. I think we should just talk a little bit more about Mark Burns. When he came out to South Africa to do this, he had only maybe a couple of years before this worked on Death in Venice with Visconti and Dirk Bogarde. So that was a huge name picture for him, Mark. Where he played the friend of the Dirk Bogarde character in Death in Venice, and I had lots of discussions with him on the set, of working with Visconti, which is absolutely fascinating, hearing his experience of that. But Mark was a really good guy, and you know what a shame that his career came to an end so early.
Yeah.
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 In terms of, because obviously this is relatively new ground for you, Ray, doing horror films, and again, Lionel was something that again was new to you. Did you? There's some lovely shots, Lionel, where there's a scene earlier with I think it's Shirley Ann and Margaret, and there's sort of it's Mark and Margaret, and there's sort of half of their face is lit and the rest is dark, and there's wonderful use of shadows in this film. Was that one of your thought, or this could be a good trademark for the film?
Yeah, well, we try to keep it very low key. We try to give it a natural look, lit by candlelight. Now, this is long before Kubrick had used candlelight to actually light a scene in Barry Lyndon. That came years after this. But what we tried to do, and under Ray's direction, was to give the feeling that the whole place was lit by candles, lit by artificial light, candles, wax candles, and things like that. So that high contrasty look is what we were going for. Unfortunately, some of the prints that are out there today, which people may see, are a little bit too dark. They shouldn't be quite as dark as that. I wish there was a better print that people could see. Because originally those scenes looked pretty good, but it worked. The look was to try and create a Victorian look lit by candlelight, and whale oil. That's basically what the world was lit by at those days.
And Ray, in terms of the Victorian setting, again, do you think did that make it easier, or it certainly made the look of give it a distinct look? What was it like to have it as a period film?
Well, the way Anita got the set dressed in that period was spot on. I mean, they got some marvelous pieces of furniture and everything in there. But when you're doing a picture of this content and the narrative, what it is, a horror picture, you've got to rely on your lighting cameraman, Lionel, to give you those shadows. The shadows are so needed. Bodies walking by, a shadow going by, and no one seeing it. I mean, that's the whole point of horror and creepy things. It's the only way to do it. But as you know, you creep up on behind someone with a camera, you're waiting for them to turn around because you know someone's standing behind them. You can't help giving these things away, but you've got to have a Lionel to give you those shadows and that feeling and ambience of the Victorian period for it to work anyway. You take that and put it into a modern period, it's not going to work.
Oh yeah. I think it's the period nature of it that probably is the key to, I think, its success, certainly. But was it easy to get things like the carriages and I assume a reasonable amount of the budget went on these elements?
Oh yeah, but it wasn't costing a lot of money to get them out there. I tell you, they weren't paying enough of it. But we had a good props department out there that seemed to be able to come up with anything, including snakes and whatever you want. They were very good, and they were all local people. I mean, some of the people I had, if I remember right, had never been on a film set ever. And they were doing it off the top of their head, and you were asking them to get you a carriage with 4 horses, and they get them for you. They get them as good as gold. They weren't appreciated enough.
There are a lot of resources in a city like Cape Town. It's a city that's been there. Remember, it was founded in 1652, so Cape Town has a history behind it. And of course, things like carriages and the sort of props we wanted in this film, they were readily available all over the place. The problem is where do you find them? But they did. The art department found them. I remember even the books in the background were all period books that were put on the shelves, and they were all, in period. They were all old books. They went out of their way to dress the sets and make the film look authentic.
Well, I couldn't have wanted it better. I mean, everything I wanted, whatever I asked for from anyone, they came up with it. They came up with it and knew how to use it and how to make it work.
And in terms of the shooting time, do you guys recall how long you kind of had to sort of get it in the can?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. So you're working quite quickly. Obviously you can never have too much time, but do you think it would have helped you had a bit more time, or do you think you kind of got kind of what you wanted at the
No, I don't think so. The thing that would have helped us, it would have been a different time of the year, and it would have been cooler because it was damn hot for everybody, crew, everybody who was working there, animals, everything. It was very, very hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one person commented, I think, on just about the dress, that the period costumes was, of course, that Shirley Ann Field's dress is probably a bit lower than it would have been in reality. So I suppose there was a conscious decision to sort of sex it up a little bit, probably for the.
I'm pleased to say that was a Krasny decision. Krasny and his wife Betty, they made the decision it would be very good for the film.
Yeah.
So I can live with that fact, that I don't think it sold one extra ticket, but they wanted it, and then it was completely wrong for the period, as Lionel's wife at that time pointed out. It was totally wrong. You'd have been horsewhips. You'd have been a strumpet. You'd have been in the background, but he wanted it. They wanted it. Hey, I just want to get the show done and everybody happy, and because we had a lot to shoot every day and a lot going on. Lighting problems were a big problem as well, because they took longer than normally they would to light, as Lionel said before. That house soaked up like blotting paper. The wallpaper soaked the light up. You got no bounce back from anything, as far as I could tell.
And you mentioned the witch, or the high priestess, whatever you want to call her, with her sort of the lights being in the horizon, giving this sort of unearthly quality. Was that your idea, Ray, or was that Lionel's contribution? Or
I think it just happened.
Just
suddenly it happened, and it sort of worked to have the two searchlights in her eyes, and I don't know what the poor lady thought if she ever saw the picture, but it worked with her chanting and her whistling and all that.
Do you remember the premiere? Was that interesting? Again, did most people allowed to attend that?
I don't know there was a premiere.
I wasn't present at that either. I'm not sure if there was a premiere. Yeah, right.
I think the film just appeared.
On the
with screams and hoofs of screaming, neighing of horses. I think it just appeared one day, and there it was, and there, Lionel and I in history, the house of the living,
forever carved in stone. Yes.
Was the film well received by the producers? Those that were in charge, were they happy with what you delivered?
They were happy because they saw a cut of my cut of the film. I had Lionel Selwyn, who was a great editor in England. He worked with me on many different shows, The Avengers, Black Beauty, so many shows Lionel worked on. That's why I wanted him. He knew the way I shot things and the way he put it together for me. I know that all the backers out there saw a cut of the film, which was after I'd left the country, because I finished it in England. So I had no problem with any of that at all. But I think there was trouble going on then with the money people and Krasny, because people weren't getting this money return, which they'd been promised in the countries where it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And many years ago, Wendy and I were in Trader Vic's in Los Angeles at the Hilton, and I walked into Trader Vic's with Wendy and Robert Urich. I was doing Vegas at the time, and who was sitting in the corner? Well, Phil Krasny and Betty. I walked straight over to him. I said, "You got my £7,000?" And he looked at me, and he couldn't put me there at the moment. Then he realized who I was, and he's up with his arms around my neck saying, "Hi, you, how are you? I had troubles as well as you." He said, "We all had big troubles." He said, the money and what. Walk away. It was just one of those things. Right. So I think the producers who waited for their results may not have liked the movie very much because of the fact that they hadn't got their money. I don't know if they ever got their money back. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
the man who owned the laundry, I did have dinner at his house right before I left, and he was looking very much forward to getting his money out in America. I know it was going to be paid all back to him in America plus interest. But
Right.
whether he ever saw one rand of it, I've got no idea.
Did the rest of the cast and crew get paid okay?
Yeah, the agents made sure everybody got it paid. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got the show because they were being paid on dailies.
Right.
Not except for Shirley Ann and Mark and Oxley and those people. No, they weren't dailies, but all the local cast were paid daily.
Hmm.
So they were getting their money. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have turned up in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. The film comes in at a reasonably short hour and 27 minutes. Was there ever longer cut, or was it always kind of? Did you feel that kind of served the story quite well?
There was very little negative left over. We practically used everything in the movie.
Yeah.
But that was the time we wanted to come out at. Roughly that time. That's the time it came out.
When you read this, when you were pitched the idea, Ray, did you like the script? Do you think it was a well-run story?
Absolutely. And I wanted to be a big movie director. I didn't want to have anything to do with television. I mean, television had done me. I was finished with television. I'm going to be a big movie director now.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky that I'm clever and lucky that I stayed with my television career and shot my 300 hours of television and stayed with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think the world was ready for 300 hours of The House of the Living Dead by Ray Austin.
Probably not. I mean, what did you think of it, Lionel? The actual project itself. Did you think, oh, this is a good challenge, or was it kind of? Or,
it was a wonderful challenge for me. I always wanted to shoot a horror film, purely because it's such a fun thing to do, particularly for a cinematographer. You can play around with lights and angles and all that sort of thing. So it was a wonderful experience for all of us. I think everybody on the camera crew had a lot of fun, including Robin. And Robin Brown, who was very, very key to the success of the film visually, has worked on amazing films and subsequently worked on even bigger films. He worked on pictures like Gundy and A Bridge Too Far and so on. So Robin was an absolute consummate, professional in every way. But we all had an awful lot of fun working on this film. And my crew, my gaffer, was an Austrian guy that I'd used on other films. And he didn't speak very much English, and I didn't speak too much German, but we got along, and he did a terrific job on this film. We had a huge crew in the lighting department, burying cables and running cables. We had a big generator truck parked in the back all times because there was no power in this house. We had to create our own electricity to run all the lamps and all the practical stuff that we were using. But we all had a wonderful time. So I look back on it with great affection. And for me, working with a cast like that and with Ray out from the UK, that was a treat. It was wonderful.
And do you remember much about the reception of the film? You say it was kind of sort of dumped perhaps in the market, and perhaps was swallowed up maybe a little bit because of other bigger horror films that were out there.
I wouldn't use the word dump. I would keep
they're not dumped, but
I would keep to my word. It appeared.
It appeared, yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the reviews and the feedback you kind of got? Was it sort of successful at the time from your guys' point of view? I know, Lionel, do you want to start us off on that one?
I don't even remember the reviews. I went from that film directly onto another film. The year was 1973. I shot 4 or 5 films that year. So from Living Dead, I went on to another film, and then I went on another film. So I don't even remember the reviews. I don't even remember when the film opened. Ray, you may remember when and if it opened in Europe. I don't know. But in South Africa, I don't recall it at all.
I remember it opened in England. The reviews weren't that great. But then they started to warm up a little bit. But fortunately for me, I was gone because I as everybody knows, that all down in history, my life took off, and I became a TV director, and I was always someone always was good enough to give me a job. I went from one show to another, so I left the whole scene behind, horror pictures and movies. I could, to put it crudely, in those days, I could earn more money doing television than I could doing a movie. You know, unless I was a David Lean or someone like that, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, they earn the big bucks on those things. But me, as my television director, was doing very nicely, coming away from trying to do movies. And I was very lucky, very lucky. But I don't remember it actually surfacing and any hoo-ha's about it. And it's only come to light because Philip and I talked about doing this, and that caused me to go in and look at reviews. And I am surprised at the reviews it gets. I mean, because there is a cult of people out there who really go for horror movies, and it was so well received and still is well received. And if people are going to go to the cinema and do the dialogue along with Shirley Anfield and Mark Burns, how much better can it be?
No, yeah. I mean, does that surprise you, Lionel, that there is a real cult following for the film?
I'm delighted to hear it. I think it's wonderful. I mean, when I heard this, I thought, gosh, no one expected that. There you are. I mean, who knew? Yeah, amazing.
Well, the same happened to me with Virgin Witches. Same happened. Suddenly one day, I don't know, about 15 years ago, suddenly I started getting email and fan mail about the Virgin Witches. That what a good cult film is. It's going to be seen again. They're going to have a showing of it somewhere here, and the London Film Festival. They're going to do it, and it's lovely. It's beautiful to hear these things.
Yes.
Having done the Virgin Witch a year or so before, Ray, did that give you greater confidence going into this one? Was it a good starting in the horror genre?
Say again, Philip.
You did the Virgin Witch about a year or so before this one.
Yeah.
You find that gave you a good grounding in the horror genre, and do you think House of Living Dead was better as a result of that introduction?
Oh yeah, Virgin Witches. I learned a lot on Virgin Witches. A good movie to shoot. A heck of a good movie to shoot.
Yeah.
Works very well, and I was lucky there. I had all mates on it, and indeed with One Girl and 1,000 Men, I had all mates on it. They were all actors that I've worked with before, all crew that I've worked with before. Terrific people, that worked with. My first assistant, Graham, was worked with me before as well. So it was like being in a family. Yeah, I was out of my depth when we went to South Africa because I was going in amongst nearly everybody a stranger, except I knew Mark, I knew Shirley Ann, but I didn't know David Oxley, but I didn't know hardly anyone else out there at all. And I'm this young fellow out there saying, go and stop, go and stop.
Yeah. And one of the locations that appears on the screen at the moment is the wonderful vineyard, and I think that was a very lovely location to have. What was it like doing the exteriors of the film as opposed to the challenges of the house, which you've already kind of sort of talked about? What was it like to be on actually location?
The locations were great. I think it's one of the first vineyards I'd ever worked in, ever. But again, and you watch it and look at it and watch when people walk around there, and that it was bloody hot and it was dusty. I mean, it really was. The crew had to put up with a hell of a lot. You imagine trying to sit under an umbrella on the camera and operate with that heat. I mean, it was very nasty that.
Yes, this wonderful scene we're looking at now with the very chilling murder with the cloaked figure, and it's very sort of getting.
Yes, I can't talk about any of that yet, not until it's over.
Oh well. I might get away as to exactly what the purpose of it all, but you've got this scene which is playing out for us now with the hooded figure, and he's just murdered somebody, and they're running through the vines, and there's this wonderful long shot of. It's almost like a maze of vines that comes across, and how do we get through it? And I think that was particularly, struck me when I saw it. It's quite well shot, this particular.
Thank you very much. So all good. All the locations were all good, all good, and everybody was very good helping out and doing it. But as I say, our biggest enemy there, I think Lionel will agree, was the time of year. I don't think we had one rain shower while we did the whole movie, did we, Lionel?
Not that I recall. I don't think we did. No, I don't. Not that I recall at all. Of course, the Cape of Good Hope is an extraordinary photogenic place. It really is magnificent. It's beautiful. You know, the city of Cape Town itself is lovely. And it's surrounded by all these amazing vineyards that were brought to South Africa by the French Huguenots, hundreds of years ago. And those vineyards have been there for they're timeless places. They're absolutely magnificent, and they spread from horizon to horizon. So the Cape is a wonderful place to shoot. And then of course you have these incredible mountains. Not only Table Mountain itself, which sits right behind the city of Cape Town, but you have other mountains. The range of mountains all the way down to the edge, the bottom end of Africa is just it's extraordinarily wonderful geography to shoot.
No, I'm lucky that I've shot in Cape Town 3 times. The last time I shot there, I went out to reshoot for David Wicks and Brian Clements, the Professionals, when we did a remake of the Professionals. Went out there and shot 6 hours or 5 hours of television out there. And we went all over Cape Town and shot under the Table Mountain, and I was lucky enough to stay at the Sellers Hotel again. It's a beautiful place to shoot. Beautiful place to shoot.
Did the locations prove any problems from your point of view, Lionel? Obviously, we talked about the heat, but also, I suppose, the dust and things. Did that make it a bit more difficult, sort of, from your point of view?
Well, the exteriors, when you're down at the Cape of Good Hope, remember you are very, very far south, and particularly at that time of year, you get very, very long, nasty shadows. There's nothing you can do about them because it's so far south. And so it's a very, very contrasty, very shadowy area in which to shoot. So it's a challenge for any cinematographer to work around that, because nature gives you this very, very contrasty world that you're seeing, and to put it on film is not always that easy, to make it look whatever you're trying to make it feel like, whether it's just be warm or soft or whatever. You've got to work at that. But being down in the Cape of Good Hope is such a treat, because there are so many. Wherever you look, there's a shot. You put a frame around it, and there's an image you can put on the screen. I remember talking to Ernie Day, who was the cinematographer of Freddie Young, and Ernie worked on pictures like Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago, and he said, my yardstick is always, whatever I shoot, you can take a roll of film, put it on a winder on a bench, and turn it as fast as you can, and then suddenly stop. And wherever you stop, if you take one frame out, that frame should be frame worthy. You should be able to put that on the wall and frame it and look at it, because its composition and everything about it should be so correct and so right. That's my modus operandi. And to be able to pull something like that off is very easy to do down in the Cape of Good Hope, because everything is so photogenic wherever you look. Yeah.
And so, Lionel, did you always have a love of cinema? How did you decide to become involved in the industry in the first place?
I fell in love with the cinema when I was 4 years old. My mother dragged me to see my first film. I was 4 years old. I think it was Esther Williams in Bathing Beauty. And I fell in love with her, and I fell in love with the movies. And when I eventually got to LA after we moved here permanently in the 80s, I had an opportunity to meet Esther Williams. And I said, you are the one who's responsible for me being here. When I saw you in this movie, she said, which film was that? And I told her, and she said, and where did you see that? And I said, would you believe, in a place called Johannesburg, way back down in South Africa? She couldn't believe that. She gave me my love of the cinema. And I was making movies when I was in high school and primary school. I was making films about the debating society, our sports club, birthday parties, whatever. Film was always my passion. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Wendy. You okay?
Super. Just watching for a second.
Oh, good, wonderful. Because I think, Lionel, at a certain point you stopped making films, sort of theatrical films, and then went into documentary filmmaking. But was that always a passion of yours?
Well, in South Africa, you have to wear many hats. You have to do whatever work comes your way. So I worked on feature films, I worked on documentaries, I worked on television series. When television eventually arrived in South Africa, television did not come to South Africa until 1976 because of apartheid. Because God forbid people see how the outside world lived, right? So that's why it was kept away. But anyway, so I worked on everything. But when I came to the United States, when I made the move here, and I think I should just tell a very brief story about how that all happened, because it's relevant to this film. It's relevant to House of the Living Dead as well. And when I came here, you know, I'd worked on all these documentaries, and what I had under my arm, I had an anti-apartheid film that I made with a friend of mine. He did a drag act. And his name is Peter Dirk Ace. He's a satirist in South Africa, and he was absolutely famous throughout the country for his political satire. And I made this film with him about apartheid, which I brought over here, and that was my calling card to get my first job here in the United States. And when that happened, you know, I was given a documentary to do, and then I got pigeonholed into that. So, you know, when you hear that's the work that comes, and whatever comes your way, you take. So I'm now, you know, basically in the documentary world. I no longer work on feature films, although I would very much like to go back to that. I'm working on a screenplay at the moment, hopefully which will see the light of day, a science fiction film that I want to see happen, and I want to be personally involved in that. But I love documentaries and I love feature films. They both have their place. They're very different. But I think they're all amazing. And let me just go back very briefly to what I was going to say earlier. Ray was talking about Lionel Selwyn, who he brought out from the UK to cut the film in Cape Town. And his assistant on that was a young lady by the name of Diana Ginsburg. And she was his assistant. And many, many years later, after we made this film, when Nita, the art director, and I got divorced, and we're still very, very good friends. In fact, I was in the UK recently, and I saw her again. But then Diana and I hooked up together, and so we got married. So I've been married to Diana now for over 40 years, and that's as a result of the House of the Living Dead, Ray.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's good. That's good. Congratulations.
Yeah, and the two of us, so she edited the film, and the two of us have made, you know, hundreds of films together since then. I write and direct, and she edits. Which works extremely well.
I think we should mention that you and Wendy have been married almost 40 years now, isn't it? It's 40 years this year, is that right?
40 years this year.
I'm in year 3, so I can't really imagine 40 years, but
I only realized that when talking about Robin the other day, Robin won't remember, Wendy doesn't remember quite well, but Wendy and Robin have worked together because he was clapper loader on Born Free.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Wendy was assistant to Andrew Donnelly, the producer. And so he was clapper loader on that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that Wendy had worked in the industry, so that's interesting. Yeah.
For our audience, a clapper loader is someone who loads the film into the camera boxes when we had film, and also he stands around with the clapper board and puts it in front of the film and says action, and we do that. See, because I'm a professional, I know that some people don't know this, and they're saying, "What the hell's a clapper loader?"
Yeah, some people might not, especially say they're used to digital, and because I assume, Lionel, you have worked on digital on a number of occasions, and I assume it doesn't really compare to you know, good old-fashioned film stock, really.
You can call it in from home now.
You can.
On one of these, you can call it in.
You can. And they do.
Yeah.
I mean, how would say House of Living Dead look different on digital? How would the filming process have been if you had shot it on digital, Lionel?
Well, I think it would have been a lot easier. We probably would have used a lot less light than we had to use those days, because the sensors in these cameras are so much more sensitive. Today, you can shoot in almost midnight and no light at all. I mean, people are familiar with tracking shots over cities at night, nightscapes. You know, it's not lit, and you can see every single window. You can see people walking on the sidewalk. It's just incredible the amount of sensitivity that they can squeeze out of these sensors today without getting any noise in there, or grain, as we used to call it in the days of film. It's astonishing. I think the technicians today don't know how easy they have it compared to how we used to fight for images in the old days of film.
Oh, absolutely.
But of course, it was a wonderful process to try and achieve those images. You really worked hard to get them, and when they worked and they were up there on the screen, you know, you felt as though you had accomplished something. Today, it's very simple, very easy to do. As Ray says, take out your phone, photograph it and put it on the screen. You know, that's all there is to today.
I mean, the days when we were shooting, Lionel and I, at the end of the day, my eyes would always be cast in Lionel's direction, and my manager to get one more shot. Will you give me one more? Is the sun going to go? And those last 3 to 5 minutes of sun, you can actually watch it go down behind the trees or behind the mountain. And I'm always looking not only to Lionel, to my cameraman through the years. Am I going to get one more shot? Can I get this scene? Am I going to make it? Can I make it? There's always fingers crossed on that.
Yeah. I mean, how quickly would you get to see the dailies being in? Was it a bit different process than you were used to working in the UK in terms of?
Oh yeah, you're overnight in the UK. We were a week, weren't we, Lionel?
Yes, if I remember, I'm not sure where we processed this. Did we process it in the UK or did we process in South Africa?
Wasn't it in Johannesburg?
I think it was, yes. So it took certainly a few days before we saw the dailies.
Yeah, back home you get it next day. You got it lunchtime, and the producers are seeing it lunchtime, and the director, if you're not on location, if you're in the studio, you can go and watch your dailies.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that today, you know, you can watch it immediately. You've done the take. You're just going to stand there and look at it, and okay, we'll buy that. It's amazing. We didn't have that those days.
No.
So I suppose that would have mean if you had to redo something, you had to you had
to know it hadn't worked.
Yeah. You see, if you hadn't seen the dailies, the set that you were working on had to remain untouched until the dailies were cleared before you could break down that set or change it to something else. You know, it was a long and involved process. And once the dailies were cleared, then you could tear the stuff down and put your next set in there. But today you can look at it immediately, which is a wonderful way of being able to do that. And I think the other thing about is today, filmmaking today, is the mobility of the camera. The camera virtually floats its way through the set today. There are so many wonderful devices today that allow camera operators to get lots of coverage of a scene, particularly fight sequences, which Ray will appreciate from his days of being a stunt guy. You know, you can get masses of coverage today by hand holding the camera. And of course it's smooth because you don't see any bumpiness or anything because of the technology that's gone into these support mechanisms that these guys walk around with today. So you get lots of coverage and you get lots of screen time. And I think that is an aid as well today. I don't think that these series that are being shot for organizers like Netflix and all the rest of it, there's no way that you could actually work on those schedules today without doing handheld shooting, because there's no way you can get the coverage.
Yeah. Were you saying Ray that there's one occasion when you got the dailies back and you had to redo something? Did you?
Oh yeah, I mean, you get something that went wrong and you got to do a reshoot. Not mainly for dialogue. You could always get around dialogue. You can trim things. Your editor can get you out of trouble. But some things don't work. Though, like you get a reflection somewhere bad in a window or something. And in those days, we shoot it next day if we had the time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't strike a set. I had a job to get used to the changeover, because the changeover started while I was still working. You know, it was called Adavision then, where we had a monitor at the side of my chair, so I could watch the scene as the camera operator shot it. It was called Adavision when it first came out. But now you can sit there with earphones on, you can watch the whole scene, and that also, you've got the right technician standing by the side of you. He can splice it and edit it and show it back to you. As easy as that. And you know if you finish with it and if it works and if it doesn't.
Yeah.
They're tools that would have been marvelous for us to have in those days, but in other ways, I used to like sitting in my chair or standing at the side of the camera in the eye line of the actor, watching it all happen and being able to read lines off and get them to look camera left or camera right. It was a different life. You sit back in front of 3 or 4 monitors at the back of the set somewhere and watch it happen as you go along.
Yeah. So we were saying with Lionel that obviously filmmaking has changed an awful lot over the years, having started in the sort of late 60s way, and then of course going into the late 90s. Did you see a lot of change in that time in terms of how mainly of course TV was kind of put together, and the shooting techniques and equipment? And
I all the way along, it was changing all the way through my career. Fortunately, as I've demonstrated and said before to your audience, I've always been a director and a person that says, tell me, show me. I don't know what you're talking about. Explain to me what you're talking about, because the young generation that came up with films. I mean, my biggest change was when I turned over and did a show called Jag. We started shooting on the Kitty Hawk, a real aircraft carrier, with all the technology which that thing had. And I'm shooting on the bridge with all these monitors and things going on, and playbacks coming up, and the editors giving me pre-programmed visuals to go up on the screen. Suddenly, I felt so out of my depths on the first episode, and I shot a bridge on the Kitty Hawk, and I had to stop it, or and say to people, "No, hold on, because I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what you're talking about." I've shot a lot of film. I put more film through a camera than Hitchcock and David Lean, but I don't know what you're talking about. And you have to do that, otherwise you get left behind. Technology is so changing as you speak. Don't you agree, Lionel?
Absolutely. I even noticed my son is a filmmaker. He lives in the UK, and even for him, the speed of change, the rapidity of change is so great that he's got to stay on top of it all the time. And it's a challenge for all of us, no matter how young you are. Because next week it may not be the same as it is today. I make a habit of going to the big exhibits that they have here in Hollywood every year, of all the latest gear. And I love just picking up new lenses and looking at camera support systems and mobility systems and all the rest of it. Because you've got to know what's out there. You've got to be, you've got to know what tools you have to make a film without letting it intimidate you. And it's easy to be intimidated by the way things change, and they are so different today. If you look at the credits today are completely different what they used to be 20 years ago. IoT, information technology, person, and all. We didn't have titles like that those days.
I mean, look at the performances we had in production, especially in television, when we shot shows like Airwolf and that, for instance. We had to have extra money in budget to do air shots and cinematography and one thing. And now we got a thing called a drone. You can send these things up. They can do crane shots with a drone as if we got a crane. We used to have to get special money in a budget to do a crane shot on the Avengers, to have a crane come out on the set for the day so I could do a lifting shot and a down shot. Now the guy does it with a drone. And you come down and go round the guy's head, and the guys can start playing dialogues in the same shots. Robin Brown had to climb on a crane and have two guys working the back of the crane, pulling it up and down, swinging the arm left and right. It was a nightmare, but we used to do it. All the biggest movies ever, it was done.
Of course.
But now.
Yeah, and things are so seamless today as well because of digitization. You can start on a close-up of a person reading a book. You can start on the lettering in the book and pull back and back and back and back, and then go through the window and then see that you're actually on the 100th floor of a building, and keep going back and back and back, and it's all one shot. You can do that with the kind of technology that's available. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Hitchcock was the first one to do that when the movie with Janet Leigh, when they go through the window, when she opens the bag of money and it goes back through the window. Everybody wondered how he did it. You've got to watch it very closely to see that there is a cut there, and it's done in a cut. But now, as Lionel's saying, you can do incredible things. We did last week a show called Randall and Hopkirk's Deceased, which was an English TV show, Lionel, about a ghost. If we'd have been doing that today with the green screen, we could have done marvels with that. It would have been incredible what we could do with that. But when we did it, we jump cut the ghost in and out all the time. Dennis Spooner used to write, he disappears, he appears. and it was a jump cut. The editor would just cut the piece of film out. I used to say freeze, and everybody would freeze and walk in, and you get it out. But now you green screen, piece of cake.
Yeah. We're getting towards the climax of the film and the confrontation between Shirley Ann and Mark, and there's a lot of great physicality between the two of them. He drags up the stairs and carries it. Would you rehearse that quite carefully, because it was a very high energy scene?
What we do is like we do when we used to do the stunts that I told everybody before. We walk it through.
Yeah.
We do all that at half speed. We walk it through so no one gets hurt. And then when we do it for real, we got 2 cameras on it if we're lucky, maybe 3 if we're lucky. And we're out there, we only had 1, I think, most of the time when Lionel did that. But I think we had a handheld Araflex as well. But you walk those through, Philip. You walk them through very carefully with numbers. What you're going to do? Will the curtain give there? Can you push through? Is there enough room on the stairs? Until you actually do it, and you do it for real.
Yeah.
And everybody by that time knows exactly what's going to happen. We're going to go. Like in a minute, you'll see when you get into the lab and he starts. Well, you'll see.
Yeah. And again, you had obviously a stunt team on the film, but how comfortable were Mark and Shirley in terms of doing as much as possible?
We had very few stunt team on the film. Mark did all their own stuff. He did his own horse riding. He was a good horse rider. They did all their own thing. I don't know that I had any stunt people on that.
Yeah,
I don't think I did.
We had a stand-in. We had Robert Davies, who stood in for Mark now and again in the field, particularly when he was running through the fields and Ricky and all that. That was Robbie Davis who did that. But Mark did a lot of his own stunts on this film. That smashing up of the lab upstairs with that flying glass. I don't know if you've got to that yet. So maybe I'm smashing.
Just almost.
He did it all himself, and he was very cooperative.
Are you dealing with when we come to that? Are you dealing with sugar glass or just normal glass for that?
Normal glass. We couldn't put sugar glass in Cape Town. You'd had to go to Johannesburg or somewhere to one of the studios to find out what sugar glass was.
I should mention, Lionel, you won a Primetime Emmy, wasn't it, for a documentary that you did? Do you have any particular memories of working on that and obviously that achievement?
Yeah, and that was for cinematography, for a National Geographic special. I actually also wrote and directed the show. The show was in the days when National Geographic used to air on a Sunday night, 4 times a year. It was a very special event, and I did a show called Mysteries Underground, which is basically the story of caves and the role that caves have played in human history. But we were also exploring a new set of caves that had been discovered in New Mexico called Leshigia, an extraordinary underground system. Today, I think it extends something like 300 miles. And when you go down there, it's like being in another world. These incredible stalactites and these wonderful growths of crystal, acres of them underground. But to photograph it is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
And to take lights down there, you don't want to flood the place with light because it looks like an ordinary room filled with light. You want to give it texture. You want to give it mood. You want to give it feeling. And so, for us, that was a challenge. And we also wanted to recreate the Native Americans used to go into certain caves in around the country and dig out crystals, which they used for, we still don't know why they did this, and how they saw their way, how they lit their way into these caves. We still have no idea today, but they used to go in there and they used to chip out these crystals and take them out and use them for whatever ritualistic purposes. We don't really know. And I wanted to recreate some of that. So doing that was a real challenge. And I got a cast of amazing looking people with wonderful chiseled faces from the Blackfoot people up in the Montana area. And we used them as our cast for these old miners. And it was just amazing. So I was very happy when the film was as successful as it was, and it won an Emmy for cinematography. And again, that is, it's not just shooting nature as nature gives it to you. You have to do things to it to make it look great.
Yeah.
and when you're recognized for that, then it makes it also very worthwhile, and it's a wonderful feeling when you pull it off.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would recommend anybody to dig it out if it's available. It sounds a really good.
Mysteries Underground, it's called. National Geographic, 1992, and it won the Emmy in '93.
So is that perhaps the most proudest of project that you have and you're about?
No, the one that I always refer to whenever everyone asks me about this is a film I did on the Voyager spacecraft mission to the outer planets. That was for a series called The Infinite Voyage on PBS here in the United States, but it aired around the world, and that's my favorite show. Writing and directing that, and photographing parts of it, but not all of it. Most of it was shot by other cameramen. For me, it was an amazing experience. I've always been a space junkie, and when I met all these technicians and all these astronomers and everybody involved with that Voyager program, getting these two little spacecraft out all the way to Jupiter and Saturn, and then Uranus and Neptune and beyond, and those two spacecraft are still going today, and we're still talking to them every single day. It's the human calling card that'll be going for tens of thousands of years. Well, that's the show I'm most proud of. I really always refer to that. It was a real privilege to be able to work on that.
Oh yeah. And we're getting to the point now where it's smashing up the laboratory, and the souls are starting to make connection with him. And of course, we've got wonderful lighting, and again, that must have been quite a nice thing, just sort of let loose and with the different color lights and everything.
Yeah. Ray, do you want to talk about that? I think our biggest concern then was Mark Byrne's safety, that he wouldn't injure himself with all that falling glass.
The glass was going back on him because he had no protection, no glasses or anything. And he just main thing I was telling him is to keep everything going away from him. He was relying on me a lot for that because he knew me as a stuntman back in the early days. And he said if he's going to do it, he'd like to do it himself. If not, we'd have had to shoot a lot of it on his back, which would have meant using the side of the set we'd never used. So I walked him through it and made sure that he always hit everything away from him as opposed towards him or to the side. And we just let him go. And Robin Brown had protection in front of him with a sheet of perspex, if I remember rightly. And there's glass going everywhere. Everywhere. And Shirley Ann was kept well back out of it.
Yeah. I think if there's one scene that sums up his great acting is when you could interpret it perhaps as him going mad, or is it actually that the souls are attacking him? But it's a very physical performance and probably quite an exhausting one. I assume that maybe just 1 or 2 takes just to get that intensity.
A few takes.
Yeah, or just one.
No, it was a one take. We weren't going to put all that stuff back up again.
Oh no, in terms of his sort of his screams and his sort of
with screaming in
the corridor and stuff. Yeah,
a close up of him doing it, and the wider shot where you're seeing the top of the table and you can see all the glass going. But then cutting in closer on him from him going mad and really screaming at her and one thing and another.
Yeah, I think it's very well done. Well, it's very well done from more angles, but his performance really sort of, he really sells it. And I think you can tell why he did get an acting award for it, because he's very good at those sort of, because it's a dual character he's playing, isn't it? So it's sort of there's quite a depth for an actor to get into, and there's lots of intimate and there's the romantic moments, and then of course there's the more sort of traditional horror villain elements. It's quite a nice, it's a good part, isn't it, for any actor?
Yeah, it's a good part for an actor.
Yeah. One of the things that did strike me was the use of horses in this film, and particularly when we get into the end now with the, because I think you've done stunt horses, haven't you? Stunts involving horses, where you're quite a good rider as well.
Well, that was one of my best subjects as a stuntman, was horse work and high diving.
And so did you like having that element and using the horses, and because it's very beautifully shot, the you know, point
Well,
color.
I had the experience of Robin and I doing Black Beauty. That's why that horse looks so lovely when it cut. Well, you
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet, but you will see it soon. Coming, the black stallion coming through the vines.
Yeah. And again, I suppose from your point of view, Lionel, it would have been great to work with the horses and just to sort of have that element to it as well.
Yeah.
So as we now finishing the film, do you guys have some favorite moments from the film? What are the scenes perhaps that stick out most? Lionel, do you want to go first?
Well, I think looking back, it's the whole package for me. It was that entire experience, those 6 wonderful weeks down in the Cape, in that amazing house, with working with all these amazing people. For me, it's 50 years ago. It's a long, long time. I don't know if I can pick out any particular element, but it's just working with everyone who worked on this film, and privilege of being able to be part of that. And that whole experience, for me, I look back on that with great affection. It was a major moment in my life to be able to do that. And, Ray, a lot of this is a tribute to you.
Thank you, Lionel. I'm the same. I enjoyed all of it. I mean, every set was a new day, and a new place. We didn't have to redress any of it because we kept using it as it was. I like very much the ending part once we get on, which you're not there yet, the death side.
Oh, well, we've now got to, the film's just now finished, yeah.
Oh, it's finished.
Yeah, just a moment ago, yeah. So,
Right. Was it one of my other bloopers on this film is, if you remember rightly now, we brought in right out of the blue in the script the shoemaker.
Yes.
Remember, who makes the lift in the shoe so he doesn't have to limp. Or if you go back and think about it, number one, when Mark rides up because the soldier has been killed in the vineyard, Mark rides up, comes flying off the horse at the run. He runs down and kneels down by the body, wanting to know what's happened.
Yeah.
He didn't have one limp or anything in that. And you couldn't notice from the close-ups which shot of this great big boot, which was making him stable. No one ever said all the way through it, why has he got a great big boot on when it's supposed to be his brother upstairs who's got the great big boot on?
Yeah.
So how we got away with this, I do not know, because it wasn't supposed to be like that, as you know. And especially as Mark in the speech with Shirley Ann says, my brother died 6 weeks ago.
Yes.
So every time we've seen the Mark Burns character, it's the brother.
It's the brother, yes, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So he should technically have had a limp all the way through it, or we should have avoided very much showing his very shiny riding boots with no special heel on it.
Yeah.
Because when I saw him get off that horse and run to it, I accepted it. When he ran and jumped, knelt down at the body, I accepted it. But when Lionel and I were editing Anita, I started saying, wait a minute, someone's going to notice this, because how can he run that fast? We've seen him hobble around all through the grapevines, carrying a baboon. We've seen him hobble around carrying someone on his shoulder. He limps all the time. Why the heck isn't he limping there?
Yeah.
There's boots. So Lionel, I think, said to me, he said, boss, he said, I think you've got to walk away from it.
Well, we did, and we got away with it.
Oh, we did. Absolutely. With those close-ups of that boot coming down the stairs.
Yes, exactly.
So naturally he didn't limp because he had the boot on.
Yeah. And it's something that I did notice when I watched it yesterday, and of course seeing it now, you do notice he does have different shoes on, so it's all correct, but of course there is a few things like
you didn't notice it, right?
No, not the first time. No.
Great, we're wonderful, Lionel. We're wonderful.
So don't look at it again, otherwise you will.
That's true of any film, though, isn't it? There's always going to be things that you notice and little mistakes.
Every single one.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the scene where he sees her in the garden
Hmm.
They have the little love talk in the garden, and he runs down the steps and walks all the way down the pathway towards her.
Yeah.
There's no limp or anything there.
Hmm.
He
Yes.
just dashes down the steps and away he goes, and takes her in his arms and walks her back up, and they stand there talking without a limp.
Hmm.
Wendy's
That's-
arrived back again.
Yeah, that's where she sees the horse in the
Just
water.
turn it
Right?
on.
So do you two have any particular favorite horror films? I'm sure the audience might be interested to know what horror films you might both hold in
Like
regard.
the return of Wendy's are one of my
I
horrors.
don't watch horror films at all. This
Then-
one does at times, but I do not watch them. No.
I'm not a big fan, to be fair.
You've got to go with Hitchcock, surely.
Well,
Yeah.
they were horror films.
So, Psycho was bloody horrible.
It was frightening.
Frightened the life out of me, especially at the top of that stairs.
It was frightening, but it wasn't a horror film where you have zombies and people doing horrible things.
No, well, maybe not, but
Well, you know,
Sometimes-
talking about horror films, one can't overlook Kubrick's The Shining. You know, I mean, that was
agreed.
a different
Wendy's
level.
like The Shining.
No.
I no, me neither.
Oh,
Um,
ooh.
I mean, I interestingly mentioned the Shining and Psycho, because although I have a very limited palette when it comes to horror films, you do recognise things that could have been in The Shining or Psycho in this film. There's sort of the psychological story with the Shining and the cabin fever. And of course, the reveal of the dead brother seems very much sort of reminiscent of something like
Very much so,
Psycho.
yes,
Or
yes, very much so. The dead body upstairs, that's straight out of Psycho, isn't it?
yeah, I don't know if that was conscious or just we're all influenced, aren't we, by things that we don't necessarily realize, I guess.
Yeah, but they're part of the genre, you know, those are the elements of the genre, so that you invariably find something like all of those elements, I think, in most horror films, don't you?
There's almost sort of a little sort of unwritten list, isn't there? Certain things you've got to do in a horror film, I suppose. Were you kind of conscious of that way of you're making a particular type of film, you kind of got to stick to a formula, or?
Oh yeah, you whatever the thing is, you know. And again, this is where the partnership with your lighting cameraman comes to fast, because he has read the script, you have read the script, you know the way you're going to direct the scene and the mood you're going to want, and normally that's where they get together and say that's the sort of feeling we want in this room at this time, or that's the sort of feeling I want to conjure up when the door opens. And this is where the union comes together and works. You've got to be very aware of that.
Oh yeah. And I think this film, I think it's been described better as a psychological horror rather than it's say that the title is, I suppose, probably not one that you would have, in hindsight, perhaps a different title would have been perhaps better for it. But I think a bit like the Shining, it's more, it could work very well without any of the supernatural elements, couldn't it? It could work just as a sort of straightforward psychological, almost like something out of Rebecca, or that sort of. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that it sort of could work independently as compared to, say, a zombie film. Of course, you've got to have zombies, but I think it's probably better than a lot of horror films because it can exist without necessarily having the jumps and the frights, and it's not a cheap horror film, isn't it, in terms of the shocks.
You're saying it could have worked as a straight narrative of a story of someone who's mentally disturbed.
Yeah, I think The Shining could as well. Yeah, so I think in good company there. I think it could have worked as a without those elements. But I don't know what you think about that, Ray and Lionel.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I find that the understated always has the more powerful element to it. If you remember a wonderful British science fiction film from the late 50s or early 60s, I think directed by Wolf Riller, the Village of the Damned.
Yes.
You never saw any monsters. You never saw any aliens. There were only these children. And the only thing that happened was that their eyes lit up. And that's the only thing that you saw. Other than that, it was a regular little English town, and they were real people. And there were none of those other elements, but it was very present. And they all left up to the audience's imagination, which made it all the more scary and horrifying. And I think that is so.
I got set on fire in that film at the gate of the farm.
Oh, you were really? Was that you were
It was
involved?
either that or it was I'm pretty sure it was a bit either Village of the Damned or Children of the Damned.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Children of the Damned was the sequel to that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked on that with Wolf, and I worked as a stuntman for him a couple of times on the Avengers.
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
And
that's
I
it.
think-
That's it.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what makes the suspense work so well is probably, you know, say the editing and of course the one for music. We haven't mentioned the music, which is one of the joys of the film. Peter J. Elliott. So I believe you'd worked quite a few times with Wade. What was the process in terms of like scoring?
Peter Elliott did a Woman and a Thousand Men for me as well.
Hmm.
Did the music on that. And Peter Elliott was a stuntman,
Yeah.
stunt artist. But he was also an Olympic diver.
Hmm.
Peter Elliott. He was married to Maggie Fitzgibbon, a singer.
Yeah.
Peter has passed now. He was a singer and dancer, an entertainer, very much like Lionel Blair.
Yeah. We were saying that obviously the film editing was Diana Friedberg and production designer was Anita Friedberg. Anita, as you're saying, Lionel was your
She was
wife.
married to me at the time. Yeah. The Diana's credit was Diana Ginsburg. We weren't married at the point. She was.
Oh, it was just, so it was, yeah. Is there any sort of final comments you guys would like to make about the film? I mean, I know one thing that me and Ray were talking about yesterday was that you felt that the film was slightly dated in places. So there's obviously little things that you're perhaps not so happy with.
Well, I think I said that too readily because, as Lionel said earlier about the house, the Victorian period, and that because we drop back into that period with the narrative, with the story, it takes away any datedness that it had.
Well, yeah, can't date because it's a period
It's
film.
a period piece.
Yeah.
Lionel and I can date it, you know, with our techniques and the way we do things now and the way we did them then. We could say we could make it look more modern or do something, but you wouldn't want to make the subject modern because it's set in the Victorian period in South Africa. So I spoke out a term too readily after I watched it, thinking that it was dated.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
The reason we get a lot of other stuff dated, like when we watch our old television shows and our new telephones, because the fashion has changed so much.
Yeah, locked into that particular 1983 or whatever it might be.
Last week when we were watching Randall and Hopkirk, as I said to Nanette Newman, her dress was so short, her skirt was so short for her pretty legs and that, you've got a date on it. You know, now that wouldn't be as short as that. So they're the things that date it, but you can't date this one as I jumped to the conclusion I could, because it's a Victorian period. The dresses and all that, except for the one where Shirley Ann is showing lots of boobs, you know, TNA.
And I think that is very much in keeping with the genre, and I didn't notice it really until I pointed out in my research. So at the time, these things don't kind of jump out at you. But you mentioned how important the house was. Was it quite difficult to find that house, or was it one of those lucky things? It just was easy to find.
I had nothing to do with it. I was just taken to a location that was already secured and bought because it was going to be pulled down very, very soon after we finished with it.
Yeah. One thing I have to just mention before we go, Lionel, you were involved you were chairman of the South African Film and TV Association for a number of years, I believe. What were a couple of highlights of that?
Well, you know, we had no unions in South Africa. We were not permitted to have unions in South Africa. And besides, if we did have a union, one would have liked to have imbued all the racial groups who were involved in the process, and we couldn't do that. So in the mid 70s, in fact, just after this film, I was going to work on another film, and we were let down very, very badly by the producers. At the very last minute, they pulled the plug on the film, and we'd all committed ourselves to working on the picture. It was a heist film to be shot in Johannesburg. The big banks stealing gold bullion and Kruger rands, and was going to be a major film. And at the very last minute, they pulled the plug, and suddenly all of us were out of work. And we thought, you know, it's enough of this kind of behavior. We have to unionize. We have to get some kind of protection. So we set up this. It wasn't really a union. It was more like a guild, if you like. or just an association of people with common interests.
Mm.
And for years and years, they kept electing me as chairman of that, and it was very good. I don't think it exists today. South Africa has become unionized. I don't think it's spread to the film industry yet. But SAFTA, as we called it, the South African Film and Television Technicians Association, went on for about 40 years, long after I left the country. And it unionized. It got people together. It got people to sort of act as a community. Black and white were all allowed to join this organization. We absolutely made absolutely sure that we were allowed to have all racial groups as members of this organization with special permission from the government. And that was a hard thing to get in the 70s. They allowed us to do that. Because I think the writing was already on the wall. People knew at that point that apartheid could not endure. It could not go on. It had to come to it.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful thing to be involved in, a very important time that you were involved with it as well. You've gone on to write a bit, Lionel, I understand. I mean, Ray writes, has got wonderful fiction books, but it's more sort of non-fiction that you write, I believe, Lionel.
Yes, I wrote a book on the history of Scotty Bowers, the notorious barman in Hollywood, the male Madame to the stars, if you like. I met him at a cocktail party here in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, and the host said to me, you know, Lionel, why don't you write a book about this guy? He's extremely well known. And I said to him, Scotty, I'm told that you have an interesting story. Well, he started to tell me his biography, his life story. I said, oh my God, you've got to write this down. Well, Scotty was not a writer. So, and he eventually agreed to have this book written. So I ghost wrote it for him. It became a New York Times bestseller. It sat on the New York Times bestseller list for 10 weeks. And it sold a gazillion copies. It's called Full Service. And it's about the star system in Hollywood and how people could not come out in the open and profess to be who they really were and profess their sexuality. And big names are in this book. And Scotty talked about them all. And when the book first came out, everyone said, "Oh no, you know, this is a lot of hogwash. This is not true." Well, it's been substantiated since the book came out that everything in that book is absolutely true. And you know, one of the authorities who came along was Gore Vidal and said, "Everything in this book is absolutely true. I was there." That's the last speech he gave, was at the book launch. So I was kind of pleased to be involved with that project. My mother would turn in her grave if she knew I wrote a book on that subject. But it was fascinating. And then I wrote a book on shamanism in Africa, which is a subject that interests me particularly. And then I've just completed, not recently, about a year ago, I brought out a book on the history of South African Airways. I've always wanted to write that. It's an amazing airline. It's now no longer flying, but it has an incredible story. So I wrote that, and I was at Foyle's bookstore the other day in London, and I said, "If you got it on the shelf?" They said, "Yeah, sure enough," and there it was. You know, so I think it's selling, and I'm happy to see it out there in the big wide world.
And I think there are links to your books on your website, if I believe, Lionel. So if you want to Google your and where, of course, you've got your website as well, and of course your books are available on Amazon, just like Lionel. So I recommend everybody to have a look at those. Is there any final thoughts you guys have before we end things?
No, not from me, my friend. It's just nice to see you, Lionel.
Ray, it's been great making contact with you again. I'd love to stay in touch with you. I'm going to see Robin tomorrow, as I said.
Yeah, give him my love. Please give him my love.
What happened? Yeah.
And no, that's it for me, Philip. I'd like to WhatsApp you in 5 minutes, though, just for a quick thing about the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no worries.
All right. God bless. Be safe.
Yeah, you too, Ray. Take care. Thanks, Lionel. Thanks, Ray.
Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.